Shawn, welcome back to the show. Audience, I want you to meet, and if you haven't seen the other podcasts we've done, some of the top-rated podcasts we've had on Future Factory, Shawn Langwell, author, writer, motivational speaker, coach. Shawn brings with him a plethora of great stuff to talk about growing you, and one of my favorite topics. And Shawn, I'm so excited to have you on the show again.
Oh, thanks for having me, Anthony. This is a delight and a treat.
When your last book came out, the numbers were amazing. It was a #1 podcast we had out at the time. And so you write the book, Today's the Day. Let's jump into that, because I think that's one of those places where, what do you mean by today's the day?
Well, today's the day. It's a play on words, because I just celebrated 38 years of clean and sober time, which is just phenomenal. And it's every single thing that I do, and you talk about this on your podcast, I've listened to many of your podcasts too, is seizing the moment, but also just living in the present moment. And today's the day really was, I don't know if what people's religious affiliations are. I'm a spiritual guy, and this was God breathed through me after I wrote 10 Seconds of Boldness, which was that podcast that blew up. And I'm like, you know what? What do I like to read? What are the things I like to do? And I took the golden nuggets of that book, 10 Seconds of Boldness, and I literally sat down over 30 to 45 days and cranked it out into bite-sized, less than 5-minute pieces so people can get motivated on a daily basis and live in gratitude. That little simple thing called gratitude, instead of what do I not have, what can I get, and what am I grateful for what I already have.
It's one of those places where I don't know that I wake up there. I sometimes tend to feel like I wake up in Jurassic Park, right? What about this? What about that? What about this? I'm looking for dinosaurs. I don't know if it's my primitive brain that wakes up with me, and it's call it 40,000 years ago. It probably was a very valuable tool, making sure that I wasn't getting bit by some snake or some sort of alligator or something. But today, I live in a comfy home, and I have Costco, and I've got all this great stuff. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't. And I address that up front. I don't wake up all bright-eyed and bushy-tail, farting rainbows and looking for unicorns. It's just not how it works, Anthony. And I have to mindfully do certain things. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not the only one. Not everybody talks about it, but there's a sequence of events in here. A lot of it is iterative. In other words, it builds on it. But I purposely, and we're going to do this right now, if it's okay with you, I wrote this book so it's not 365 days, because we can do that. But I'm like, how do I like to read? Sometimes I'll read these daily motivational things or affirmation books, and I just open it up, and it says, confidence is a product, not a prerequisite of success. This is a key theme of the whole book, 10 Seconds of Boldness. And if I may indulge you for about maybe a minute and a half, I'm going to read it. There's a common misperception many ambitious people make. They wait for confidence to come before they get started. That's not how it works. Confidence is a product of discipline, motivation, and effort. It also requires willingness, courage, and belief. Put simply, we become confident when we muster the courage to take a chance on ourselves and boldly step into uncharted territory, the unknown, and begin the process of trial and error toward a worthy aim. With each failure or success, we build knowledge and gain valuable experience, which increases our self-confidence. Discipline, motivation, and effort are the pillars of building confidence. Without effort, we will never know what it means to be confident. And when we know, because we have done, that is confidence. Until we risk our ego and pride and take a chance on ourselves, we will never become fully confident in our skills or abilities. Again, confidence is a product of doing, not just thinking. That's the kind of stuff you get in this book. And I just got goosebumps reading it in my own words.
That's what I love. I mean, look, it's simple stuff that I can do every day. Look, I think that's what I'm looking for, right? A way to do a course correction, right? A way to get me on the beam for the day and really have me, take those words and go, all right, look, it's not about waiting for the moment I'm going to get motivated. It's about putting my sneakers on and getting to the gym.
And the fact that you and I are sitting here having this conversation right now, I respect you. I know what it's like because I'm also a podcast host. And when a guest cancels for any number of reasons, you got to pivot and you got to deal with what's in front of you right there. And I just sent you an email because we've been trying to set this up. And folks who are listening, I can't say this on air. I'm not going to say it. Anyway, roll with the punches because you know what? Life is not a straight line. And the sooner that you figure that out and stop trying to make it work, and especially for Anthony's audience here of folks that are in the construction industry where you have plans, you know what this is like. Nothing ever goes 100% according to plan. So I'm happy that you reached out to me and you trust me enough to pull something off like a rabbit out of my hat.
So what Shawn's talking about is we had a podcast guest that we were going to have on today, and for whatever reason, it just it didn't line up well, and we blew it. And I just got an email from Shawn saying, "Hey, we haven't done a podcast in a while." I called him. I go, "Hey, you want to do one right now?" And he goes, "You know I am." And he did. He went, go, "Give me a second." He went to, did a couple things. I sent him an invite, and boom, we're podcasting. This was 10 minutes ago. We were not podcasting, and 10 minutes later, we're podcasting. And what I love about Shawn is, what he does isn't something he's pretending. It's who he is, right? So you can, when you are the being, when you are that creator, that comes out. You don't have to prepare for it. It's the way that you are, and it's kind of fun having your ability to just go boom right into that, right in that space. Shawn, do you remember the time where you had that defining moment where you realized you had to make a change in your life? Where was that spot? That one key spot that said, "All right, I got a defining moment or something."
Well, there's lots, and in the very first book that I wrote in Beyond Recovery, there's the recovery side that has several defining moments that I outlined there, and then 10 seconds of boldness. There was another defining moment, so I can talk about both. Which one are you referring to? Do you want me to go the
Both. Yeah,
recovery angle
go to
or
both. Yeah, go to both. I
go
mean,
both?
I love these moments where there's a shift, a whole dynamic, a whole parameter shift in your life.
All right, so I'll give you guys get the benefit, and I've written the memoir, so I'm going to break my own anonymity here. But I just celebrated 38 years of clean and sober time on October 10th, and the
Nice.
impetus for this was the Cliff Notes version of the story, and I'm going to do it in about 2 minutes for your sake. But I'm doing it because I trust Anthony, and I also want this to reach at least one person who says, you know what, I need some help, and I'm going to actually have enough courage to go out there and do it. That's why I'm doing this, and that's why I write every single thing I do. So here's the story. Cliff Notes version. I came home from college after a nasty ass accident. My mom basically told me, you don't get to vote anymore. You need to come home and get sober. So that was my intent in April of 1986. I did everything that everybody talks about in recovery rooms that you're not supposed to do. I bounced from bar to bar to bar. I called it the Bermuda Triangle, and I was looking for love in all the wrong places, doing all the wrong things, thinking somehow, some way my life was going to magically change. Guess what? Whether you're in business or in recovery or life, nothing happens until you find the courage and guts to get off your lazy ass and go do something about it. But it wasn't a tough love thing. I had to figure this out on my own. And here I am, despondent in an oversized tuxedo suit, coming out of a blackout, dragging my feet across a gravel path in Fairfax, California, as the sun's coming up. And I was feeling really, really lousy. I was still a little bit wasted, and I'm coming out of this blackout, and I heard birds. And for some people, like the Bob Marley song, Two Little Birds Beside My Doorstep is a very happy moment. For me in this moment, it was the worst thing I wanted to hear is happy chirping birds. Fast forward, there's the sun coming up over the ridge, and it hits this knoll. It's like a grassy hill. A golden ocean is what I call it in the book, a golden ocean on a summer day. And it just pulled me. And the epiphany and the aha and defining moment didn't happen at the top of the hill. It happened at the bottom. And here's what happened. I stepped onto that hill, and next thing I know, I'm tumbling head over heels down to the bottom of that hill. And I came to rest, and I'm looking at my suit covered with stickers and burrs, and I'm just going, you know what? For the very first time in my life, the defining moment, and I wasn't raised religious or anything, I said, God, please help me. And the God shot that happened there was I had happened to be exposed to some meeting literature for 12-step recovery programs from my brother's friends who were checking out AA. And I just happened to remember in that moment that there was a meeting not far from where I was. And that's where I'm going to leave the story there. I walked in there, and the rest, if you want to read it, it's in a book called Beyond Recovery, or find me somewhere, and I'm going to share my story on my own podcast. But that's story number one.
I got that down below. It'll be in the link. That book link will be in the description down below. So you want to get it. It's a wonderful read. Great read. All Shawn's books are great, worth reading.
So story number two, Anthony, and I'm getting a little choked up because I'm on the crossroads of yet another defining moment, and it's happening literally as we speak. And that's one of the things I love about being on your show. You and I have this connection, even though we've never met in person, that is heartfelt, it's sincere, it's genuine, it's every single thing that people strive for in a professional, in any profession, or on a personal relational level. There's a certain intimacy that Anthony and I have with our friendship here that I'm going to try and transfer over to you, because I want you to grab one or two things out of what I'm going to say in the next minute and a half. I've been in sales for over almost 3.5 decades. I've been a peak performer. I've won multiple contests. I've got awards, and it's not all about that. What it is about is continuing to put one foot in front of the other. And I had this wild idea after I wrote Beyond Recovery to write another book, and it was originally going to be a goal-setting book. I've achieved so many goals in my life that it almost became easy, and I don't want that to sound as arrogant as it probably does, but on my report cards in school, Anthony, they always said working below potential, because a lot of stuff for overachievers, you understand what I'm talking about. It's easy, and I call it ambitiously lazy. I'm going to do the absolute bare minimum to get the best grades I can, and then I'm going to go screw off. So here I am. I've done this cycle in my sales career year after year after year. I call it hero to zero syndrome. And I'll have a great year, and then the next year is sucky because I'm coasting and thinking that I can do it without the same amount of effort. And that's a word that we all know in business. It's called complacency, and it's the death of your business if you don't pay attention to it. Complacency will kill you faster than a brush fire on a windy day. So here's what happened. I was writing this book, and I'm like, I can't finish this book. My sales are going through the freaking floor. They're in the toilet. How can I legitimately build on this book that I'm trying to inspire other people to do these things when I can't even do it myself? And Anthony's right. Anything and everything I write about or talk about, that's one of the things that I think is my own brand, that I do what I've said and what I teach in every single thing that I do. So here's the deal. I don't know of a single person in the world that actually gets up in the morning and says, oh, it's great to be alive. I'm going to go make a whole shitload of phone calls today and call them cold calls, because it ain't the truth. If you're in sales any length of time, you're full of it if you say you love doing that. If you do, send me an email at ShawnLangwellWriter.com and tell me your story, because I'll include it in the next book. But by and large, it doesn't happen. So fast forward. It's more than a minute, I know. I'm writing this book, and I'm like, I just can't do this. And my sales were down, and I was worried that I wasn't going to make my commissions to pay my mortgage. And I wrote on a Post-it note, quite literally, one like this that I put on my desk now because I'm on that crossroads. It's called 10 Seconds of Boldness. And I put it on the wall above the phone, and guess what? Every day for a week or 2 weeks, I stared at it and I didn't do anything. And then I'm going, I got property taxes coming up. I got birthdays. I got rent. I got food, blah, 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 blah. And I started making the calls, and I started doing it. And as I'm doing it, I started paying attention to what was going on, and I started writing about it. And then I walked through that whole process, and it became part of the book that was very real, very tangible, very practical. And it's my 5-step method for basically solving any problem and building self-confidence. My sales, because this is a business podcast, my sales during the middle of the pandemic went from shit to 35 to 45% growth, not for 1, but 2 years of the pandemic in consecutive years. This stuff works because I've worked it.
That's all. That's amazing. It's just one of those places where you put action into reality, and all of a sudden you've got it. The 5 steps that you go through to get that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
All right, I got them here because I always tweak them around a little bit. So the 5 steps, it's a simple 5 step method, and it's not rocket science. We all know what these are, but it's the application. Knowing something and applying it are two very, very different things.
Right.
You know
That's right.
about that. So the 5 steps are: number one, identify the problem or opportunity. Don't always focus on the negative. Every problem has an equal and opposite opportunity. It's not Newton's first law of physics, it's just reality.
Yeah.
Number two is clearly define what the F you want. What is it that you want? Really? So you got to get on into causes and conditions and look at the problem, but don't dwell there. Change that and go into clearly deciding what it is that you want. You're here, you want to be here. How do you move from where you are to where you want to be in a way that is very logical, has some weight and gravity to it? And that brings you to the third step, which
Well,
is
let's go back
why.
before you get into that. Before you get into that. What's the resistance for most people finding out where? I ask people all the time, "What do you want to do?" I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? I mean, well, I'm just not happy where I'm at. I'm like, well, what is it you want to do? Right? What's the resistance? What's that resistance in that step two?
If you want to read the best book on resistance that I've ever written, it's a little heady because there's some references there, but read Stephen Pressfield's book, oh shit, I just forgot it. The War of Art.
Yeah.
The War of Art. The resistance is our ego. I mean, to put it to one word, our resistance is pride and ego. It's 2 words. Our resistance to fear of failure, our resistance to what people are going to think, our resistance to not speaking up because we're scared that people are going to think we're scared or we're stupid. I mean, all of that emotional and mental baggage that we carry around, and they put a name on it. It's not a clinically defined condition, but a lot of people refer to this as imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And the only way that what I read out of Today's the Day, the antidote for that is to get into action, because until we risk our ego and pride to actually get out there and skin our knees a little bit, we won't learn anything and we won't change enough. So the resistance, I think, is really more about saving face, Anthony, than anything else. And also,
Like you're afraid to like all right, let's say I want this for a house, I want that for a job, I want this for a lover, I want this for a vehicle. I just figure out what you would look. I ask people all the time, just let's get physical about what is it you want, right? Like, what does it
right.
look like, smell like, act like, taste like, right? The more I can define it, the better we can point the ship at it, and we can aim that way. But you're right. I think it's the ego, it's that mindset that maybe I was told I shouldn't be asking for these things. Maybe it's all that
Right.
kind of nonsense stuff that it's in there.
Well, there's that, and there's also, and that comes back to, fear of rejection and fear of what other people are going to think of us. But it's also just a habit. There's a big preponderance of folks that have taught us to just kind of like not ask for our own selfish reasons. And that becomes this other inner conflict that happens that creates the resistance, because I did it at the beginning of the show. I still have a hard time talking about some of my successes because I don't want to be coming off as an arrogant ass. And I'm not. It's the furthest thing from what I am. I
That's right.
care a lot about helping other people. So the other flip side of this, and it's also very real, is not just fear of failure, but it's fear of success. And that's what I'm dealing with right now. I am
Yeah.
doing these things and I'm seeing the changes happen, and it's scaring me because I don't want to I just talked about, I don't want to be perceived as some hoity-toity, higher than thou, somebody who's super successful, and I'm not, but that's in my own head. So there's no clear-cut answer on this, Anthony. It really comes down to a decision, and that leads into the second underlying thing of, desperation is the biggest motivator for a lot of people. It'll either eat your
Sure.
lunch or it'll motivate you to actually change. And that's the third component of this 5 step process, is why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book about it of find your why or get to why. And that was more from a business perspective. This is when I talk about finding our why, it's about looking in the mirror and the introspection process that comes to being becoming intimate with yourself. And really going back to the second issue again, part of that clarity issue is a fear of intimacy. If you stop and think about it, it's about vulnerability. It's about letting people know something that I'm not totally sure about, especially if you're a leader, a CEO, a president, uh, an owner of a multi-million dollar company. These are very real things that happen to people, and we're conditioned to say we need to have it all together. I'm the leader of this company. I'm the leader of my family. I'm the leader of an organization. And if we don't, then somehow we think that we're less than, or how could people follow us? Well, try a little bit of vulnerability. And I know this from 38 years of doing it in 12-step meeting rooms. The vulnerability is the secret sauce. It's
Mm.
the connection point. The vulnerability is the secret sauce that is impeding our ability to grow into and fully actualize who we can be and who we want to be as human beings, as parents, as coaches, as leaders, as business owners, all of it. And it becomes an intimacy issue. So the why is, well, what do I want out of this, and why would I want to invest this time and energy? Well, do you want to push people away for the rest of your life? Do you want to be perceived as, somebody that's a tyrant that tells people what to do and just do as I say, not as I do? No. The goal of all of us is to build connections and communities and create this concept of unity. And I'm kind of delving into this book that I'm working on now, but these are very real problems that we are facing as a culture right now. There's this growing divide, and I don't give a rip which side of the aisle you are on, politically, religiously, or otherwise. This is a human problem. And the human problem is the inability to actually have true compassion with another human being. And until we learn how to look in the mirror and do this stuff on our own, the world is going to continue. The divide between humanity is going to continue to grow. And I got to be frank, this is the first time I'm sharing this publicly, folks. If we don't do something different, starting with ourselves, the world is going to be a very, very much harder place to live.
The why, figuring out the why, it's interesting. And that whole thing you talked about, you know, figuring out one, who I was, right? That number, what it was I wanted, right? Like you're trying to figure that out because right, the ego gets in the way, and should I can't be bold and ask for something, or I can't go do something. Look, even as a leader, I find myself in places where when I go to tell somebody something, I want to hedge my bet because I want to be liked by them, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
what ends up happening is they don't want that. They want a leader that's going to be bold and be in there, but also vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There are days when I need to say, no, no, we're going this way. Look, we have to take that mountain. You're gonna take the hill, and here's what we're gonna do today. Stop. This is what we're going after. And there's times when they need to know that I'm a human being, that I want to be loved and be held and be supported by them, and that's really important to me to have a community around me. But I find it as there's often times where the business or the company, I'm going through a tough year. This year's been a tough economic year for the construction world, and our
Mm-hmm.
margins. You look, our margins are getting squeezed from both sides, and that fear kicks in, right? And
Right.
there was a time a couple of weeks ago where I felt like, oh my god, I'm gonna pack it up, and maybe that's it. I'm tired of going to fight the fight, and I've been in the thing, and I'm like, stop. I look, over this last 2 weeks, I had to really come back to what's your passion? What do you love
Right.
doing? What was it that had you love doing it? And it was, I love this business. I love this game. I love the human beings that I get to work with, and they need me now to be bold, brave, and forward facing, and bring them along when they have doubt. Right? They need to know that there's someone there that's going to go. All right, hey, I've I've got that. So I think there's times for both in leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I need to lay back and be. Where I need to stand, step forward or step in and be the Pied Piper for the team, but there's also a time when I need to step back and lay into their arms and know that I'm supported
Yeah.
and have a team of people around that. And ultimately, that's the beauty of a long term relationship.
Well, and Anthony, think of this too. I'm going to put you on the spot just for a second, but go
Sure.
back to the time when you first met and started courting your wife.
Mm.
And what were those whys? See, we all have these. We just don't spend the time and energy to get back to that because we get into the the rat race. Call it whatever you want, but we're on the wheel on the treadmill and getting squeezed by vendors, getting squeezed by clients, getting squeezed by staff, by regulations. I'm trying to put buzzwords out here that your audience is familiar with, but I deal with it from an advertising standpoint for my day job clients all the time. And these are real conversations, but the conversations stay in the how to mode. And we don't always take the time to be vulnerable enough to get down one or two or three or four layers deeper, or sometimes five, six, and seven to get to the core of what it is that truly motivates us. And if we cut away all the other BS, there's one word that is the key motivator of anything and everything that we do as human beings, and it's love. It is
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And I say this because it's become a theme in the last three books that I've written. It's become more apparent as I've dived into and looked at this from scriptural perspectives, from business perspectives, from motivational perspectives. And it's a word that, going back to what that resistance is, that's directly tied to intimacy and to vulnerability and to part of our resistance to want to actually do that because we don't know exactly how. And in a business setting, you can't open up a board meeting to your your executive board and say, all right, I love you guys. You can, but there's this disconnect that says we can't. So I'm going to ask you a direct question because
Sure.
I want it to come from you and not me putting words in your mouth. But what was it? How long have you been in business now?
27 years.
All right. Take me back to 28 years ago, 27 and 28, that
Yeah.
first
Right.
year. What was it that made you want to jump into this big pond? Because it's a very big pond, Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah. So if the first thing for me was I wanted control of, I had worked for some companies beforehand and I'd gotten let go of, and it wasn't, I didn't get fired. The company just stopped building, right? The
Mm-hmm.
problem in the construction world is you build yourself out of a job, and that feeling of putting all that work in and then be left empty handed at the end of it just felt like a desperate feeling. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm tired of working my butt off and having this relationship where I gave, and then at the end of it, I felt empty. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I want to create a group of people that we take care of each other, and we will live into. We'll have multiple clients. We'll live. This one will live, and this one will die, and this one will grow, and together we'll build something where we'll build ourselves a job always,
Yeah.
and have the ability to grow this company. Now, yeah, that's how it started. That really was where it started from.
And then what happened to keep you doing this for the next 25 years? Because there's been a lot of
Yeah.
change in building and office construction and tenancy. The pandemic is
Yeah.
hammering the crap out of commercial real estate. I mean, there's so many other outside variables. So when you get into this place where you're being squeezed by suppliers, et cetera, and I'm asking this because it's great for me and for your audience, where do you go back to say, you know what, I don't want to throw in the towel. Here's why I chose to be in here, and who, and why is not just about what you want, but it's also about the people that you're employing and the lives and families that that's impacting, right?
Yeah. So the next one became who I became as a man, like who I became as a man to lead them. Like that journey was a discovery of something I didn't understand, right? Like all of a sudden there was this who I was a leader who created the company that I had when I started, right? But then as I wanted to grow the company, I had to grow me, and that game became um, amazing this amazing game where all of a sudden I had I could start working on with level one, level two. Look, you're getting 6 and 7 levels down there, and dealing with when I found out I was the bottleneck of the company, my thoughts, action, behaviors were the bottleneck, and then all of a sudden I started working on, well, where do those come from? And I
Yeah.
started noticing, oh look, I'm trying to I use this company to be seen, right? I use this company to be liked. I use this company, and some of those things maybe were good, but some of them also created behaviors that weren't great for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I could start to work on those things, and I could show up as a different human being in the room to lead them, and then that kind of twists and who I get to be for them
Right.
gets a change, and then that becomes something I love, something where I get to be with human beings in a way where, kind of like what you do in a different way. I get to be a coach and inspire and lead and motivate people on my plane, right? On this level, and that's become something that I love lighting people's candle,
Right.
and that's something I didn't have when I started. So that was kind of some of that discovery stuff.
And you were open-minded enough to recognize it. How did this happen that it was brought to your attention? Because we all have major blind spots, but just for your listeners and for my sake too, what was there an inciting incident that happened that helped you kind of go, oh wow, I need to pay attention? Did somebody call you out on it? Was it a
Yeah.
360 review or what?
No, it was really was same thing for you. Where I got into recovery, right? There
Okay.
was people that would come up to me and go, hey, we're worried about you. Hey, I wasn't showing up. I was sick all the time. I
Mm,
was, had the flu at least every other week.
yeah.
And just my ability to be present in the moment was not there. And then all of a sudden, I find sobriety. I start to work on, you know, one sobriety brought with it one gift. The gift was the desire to be better, to do better, came with it. A sober Anthony is much different than a drinking Anthony, where when I drank, I got the efforts,
Yeah.
forget it,
Yeah.
it came with that. And sobriety comes with, yeah, it may not be perfect every day. In fact, it's never perfect.
Right.
You're riding some kind of wave of a mess, and but wanting to do better is where the gift is.
Yeah. Well, this is, and I totally appreciate this conversation we're having because it's a treat, and I hope somebody who's listening gets a little something out of it. So we don't leave your listeners hanging. The other two steps are actually the easiest. They're the easiest for me because I've lived and breathed them, and they probably are for anybody who's in business or sales or used to working with people on a regular basis, students in particular too. It's number four is write a clear plan, and that can be 101 different things. You can write plans till you're blue in the face. My suggestions are, I mean, you have to deal with plans and blueprints all day long, I would imagine.
All day.
Um, and there's some inherent things with plans that people who aren't used to the planning process don't readily embrace. There's some resistance around that it has to be the perfect plan, and I have to think this all the way through, and there's one word that comes up with most plans, and there's the resistance again. I need certainty. If I have a plan, I need to know that it's going to work. That brings you back to the indecisiveness, to the second guessing, to the overthinking, to all these other mental. I call them, excuse you for your viewers, I call it mental masturbation because that's literally what it is. Your mind effing yourself and you're
That's right.
not moving forward. So to get that wheel sprinting forward, don't get hung up or attached to a particular plan because I did the remodeling here. I didn't have a contractor. I had a contractor, but I had to draft up the plans for my own kitchen and what I wanted. He dragged his ass to get them submitted to the planning department for the city to get approvals. I ended up having the electrical contractor do it. And it's no slight against my contractor, but I was changing the structure and I didn't want to jeopardize my homeowner's policy for not doing it properly. And I had to make adjustments. I just redid the bathroom up here and got it out. And lo and behold, the contractor to build the house had a shortcut. And I had to spend another X number of dollars to have the exhaust moved. I had a plan in my mind. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And those are two really important pieces if you are going to plan. Number one, you have to have an idea. Number two, you got to write it down. If you don't write it down, it stays in your head. And you know what? It's too easy to say, F it. I don't need to do
That's
it
right.
today.
That's right.
Then you get into a procrastination cycle. Then you get into, oh, my poor me. Then you get into the victim all of that. So the plan, make a plan. It's easy. Start with something simple, give it a go, adjust it is where I'm going with this next. You have to be able to be flexible with those plans. And then the last one is just number 5 is start working the plan. Don't stay in purgatory of planning forever because it's not going to change anything. The best laid plans in the world, I haven't told you this before, but I was originally I studied to be an architect. And part of my plan in high school, I got this wild idea that I wanted to do this. And I drafted a passive solar home out in Stinson Beach, California, which is now multi-million-dollar houses. And I had the entire working plans for this. And then the computer and internet came along and I went a different route. But I look at those, I came across them not too long and I'm like, you know what? These plans actually work. I may have to tweak a few things because of sea level rise and, put up some seawalls so the house doesn't get flooded out. But you know what? It's fun. And I don't know where I was going with that, but I didn't execute on that because I pivoted and that's okay. And that's what I want people to hear is it's okay to change your mind. Going back 2 steps to the why, when you know why you want to do something and how important it is for you to actually accomplish it, as long as it's not going to hurt somebody else, then the means to get there doesn't really matter as long as you keep this why front and center. And there's a specific reason why I put it number 3, because if you're looking at this, it's in the middle. There's 2 before, there's that in the middle, and there's 2 after. So this is an internal stuff of kind of up here. Then you go from the head down to the heart. The heart is the why, and the gut is the action point. It's the engine that moves all this. So from head to heart to gut, you've got 5 simple steps. And we don't have to overthink it, do we? We just have to get in there and do it. And then realize that we're not going to do it right the first time, maybe not the second time or the third or fourth or 20th. But eventually we all started on our knees, and unless you have some physical ailments and you're not able to walk bipedally, you're able to walk. But it started on our knees crawling. And even that was a struggle when we're, 6 months to 18 months trying to figure out how to do that. We probably knocked our head a few times on a coffee table. Maybe we had to go to the ER and get stitches. I don't know. But did you give up? Mm-mm.
No.
And
No, and would you give up on a baby that was doing it? No, we don't
No.
give up and just keep trying, right? Keep going. There's a couple things you said there that jumped out at me. The part about just get started, right? Getting started. And by the way, I've gotten started on things and then my why changed. Like all of a sudden I did something and I noticed, there was a change in my why. Like all of a sudden, like when I first started making money, there was like my why was I wanted money.
Yeah.
I wanted to make money, right? Like it was about money. And I realized that's not really why. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, right? I love that security thing. I love that being part of. I love that so just getting started gives the start taking that action. And when I tell people to start, keep lowering the bar to whatever you have to lower to. I don't care how low you have to go. If starting a business or an idea, or like if starting the business is just a matter of thinking of names today of what I'd call the business, or lowering the bar to figure out how do I get a business license. Lower the bar until you find one course of action that you can start on, and the rest is it's like a sweater vest. You find that thread, and the rest of it will unwind. Right?
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of something, and this is the power of keeping things simple too. I'm not in a financial situation as of right now that I can go take Anthony up on his offer, but he says, I really would love to have a group of guys that, we have the thinnest wallet possible, and we pick up the phone, we send each other a text, and we say, hey, you want to go to Milan today and go get a plate of pasta. It's a dream, folks. I don't have an immediate why to want to do that, but the seeds of a dream start with the simple things that Anthony and I are talking about right here. Start small. and then you start building it. And that's how the confidence wave happens. That's how you embrace this carpe diem idea of today's the day. This is how you embrace the book that I'm coming out with next spring that's called Embrace the Space Between Extremes, because we live in
Mm.
these extremes of all or nothing, black or white, this or that. And you know what? It's BS. It's real, because every single thing in this world, and you probably have guests on here that can speak way better to this than I do, but the entire world functions on polar opposites. If we do not have opposites, there is nothing to keep stuff in balance. And if you go down to the atomic level, there's neurons, and the atom has these different polarities. The world has different polarities. So those aren't wrong. We don't need to make them wrong. But what we need to do if we want to move forward is come back to this center that Anthony and I are talking about right now. It's the messy middle in between of, it's okay to not be the richest guy in Petaluma, California. It's okay to be a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 38 years and wake up some mornings and say, you know what, I don't want to freaking go to a meeting today. It's okay. What's not okay is if I start stringing those things together day after day after day, and then I get into the efforts, and then I get into real trouble. So it's about having this balance. And I'm sharing something with you right now that my stepfather, bless his soul, passed 4 or 5 years ago. We had many, many conversations about this. And he said, there's all of life is about balance. Think about that. Sports, if you're off balance in a batter's box, it's world, playoffs are going on right now. You're going to be out in front of a pitch. You're probably going to hit the ball into the ground, or bang it off your shins. The best hitters have balance, not just in their physical presence in the batter's box, but in their mind, their body, their soul, their spirit. Balance is the way that we thrive as human beings. And when we are out of balance, it's simply because we've lost our equilibrium and we've gone to one extreme or the other. And you know what? Everything vacillates back and forth, but we all come back to this equilibrium point eventually. So the purpose of this book is really to try and detach and silence the noise out here and intentionally come back to center. And I don't care how people choose to manifest this, whether it's prayer, meditation, going to an ashram, grabbing our thin wallets and saying, you know what, I really, 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 really want to go to Machu Picchu because I've wanted to do it all my life and I've never done it. And I know we got to sit there and get acclimated for a few days before we go all the way up to the summit. But I want to go stand on the top of that mountain and know what it was like for the Incas who did it by foot going back and forth, not because they were chemically induced with chewing coca leaves, but because it was super cool.
I mean, look, I've stood on Machu Picchu, and you look at it and go, man, there are. First of all, the Peruvians are some of the shortest people you ever met, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they're just these little beings, and you look at this massive place they built, and sometimes it feels like little ants that built it. It's an amazing experience. It's a spiritual place. You can feel the spirit there. The rituals that have taken place over thousands of years there had to be pretty amazing. And yeah, look, keep pushing through those boundaries that we have, those financial boundaries, those mental boundaries. Look, the day that we get to go take that trip, I get that text and go, let's go. That's a boundary, right? Like breaking through the bigger, bolder idea and let that manifest. That then all of a sudden that becomes, you know, then we have a chat group where all of us do it,
Yeah.
right? Then you get you can imagine a day where all of a sudden that starts as an idea, and two guys just put it out into the universe as a conversation, and then all of a sudden it becomes a group thing, and all of a sudden the group thing becomes this just amazing event where human beings can be, because I love consistency. Like I love having my life consistent. I love, if you really watch most of my life, I love the consistency of it, right? I know where my keys are. I know what I get up in the morning, I make a cup of coffee, I know how my brewer works. I have a very systematic approach to it, but I also need some of that inconsistency, because if
Yeah.
not, I feel a little bit redundant, a little, I start getting bored, right? I need a little that inconsistency, that bold, big behavior that's outside of my normal day to day, kind of structure, and like a place that scares me a little bit.
Well, and I love that you just said that too, because spontaneity is the spice of life, and the spontaneity and the joy, and whether people are spiritual or not, that is where the magic happens. When we go to those skinny branches and we take a look out over the cliff and we see that there's whales dancing on the shoreline below us, we wouldn't see that if we weren't close enough to the edge or out on a skinny branch. And walking through those fears or whatever it is, if we think we have control, and it kind of, you've heard me talk about this many times when I share in meetings, but the I got this syndrome, the I
Oh,
gotness is being so selfish and self-centered that we choose to play God basically, and we are not allowing an opportunity for either other human beings to speak into our lives because we're unwilling to ask for help because of pride and ego, going back to what we originally started with. And even more so, if we claim to be spiritual beings, where are we making room for the spirit to come into our lives? And I'm just like you. I'm a routine guy. My wife is a little bit more of a free spirit, and guess what we're doing? And I'll share this with you real quick. We have date nights, and she says, she doesn't tell me what we're doing. She says, dress warm, bring a blanket. Put it on the calendar. Dress
there you
warm,
go.
bring a blanket. And as a guy, I'm going, oh, what are we going to do here? Furthest thing from what I had in mind. So she drives down the street, and I'm like, well, what do I expect? And I start asking her questions. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go with this. She knows me. She's not going to invite anything. Sometimes she'll say, eat first, dress nice, um, those types of things. Anyway, right down the street, bring a blanket, sunset, summer evening. We pull up into this parking lot that's literally 3 miles from my house, and it's a dahlia field. And there's women out there with these flowing white robes, and there's sage and incense. And I look across, and there's all these people laid down on yoga mats and sleeping bags. And I'm like, what the heck is this? She treated me to one of the most spiritually and awe-inspiring, spontaneous experiences I ever had in my life. It's called a sound bath,
Mm.
and we went through this guided meditation. And there's gongs, and there's these
Mm.
different inanimate objects that they're making sound like waves, and your eyes are closed. And it's not woo woo, goo goo, gaga, whatever. It's just getting down to the core rhythms of who we are as human beings in that safe, sacred place between these extremes. And she put me in there on that blanket, and I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it, because this is the spontaneity that we get. We can still do the work a day, but we got to make space for those important things. And the reason I mention this too is, if we don't, we burn out way too fast. If we
Mm.
don't, we jeopardize the intimacy with our spouses or our children or our coworkers. If we don't, I tell my boss things that no other human being probably should, without jeopardizing getting fired, because I'm uptight. So this time right now, I intentionally took off. I didn't. Well, it wasn't my choice. I was told that I needed to take some vacation time because I acquired a whole bunch. So this last week, I'm on vacation until the 22nd, next Tuesday, and I'm doing things like this to share spontaneously with a buddy of mine who calls me up and say, "Hey, you want to jump on a podcast?
Let's jump in. Let's
Let's
go. And you
do
jumped
it."
right in. You jumped
So
right
kind of like
in.
putting a big bow on this. This is how we do it. And you can hum that song till you're blue in the face because it gets me fired up. But if you want to get out there and enjoy the joy that is there in life for each and every one of us, this is how we do it.
This is how we do it. This is how we do it. And look, for me, having guys around me like you that uh, live boldly. Look, that I can walk and be a great example to. Today I'm surrounding myself with guys that do that, right? That are in that space that say, hey, we're going to try to find ways to live better, be better men, right? To work
Oh,
on
yeah.
ourselves, our thoughts, actions, and behaviors. And look, how do we ultimately, the work that we're doing, right? The writing the books, the podcasting, the spiritual path, the spiritual growth, all that is in efforts to really ultimately become a better human being. And like, truth is, I kind of want that. Like, I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy that practice of wanting to be better, as opposed to maybe when I was younger, some of the behavior was, how can I be a debaucherous being? And I probably tore people down. And I know I did. Like, I was a ringleader. In fact, I've got some friends of mine who were just joined in recovery, and she was like, she was telling me, she goes, you were the Pied Piper of badness,
No wonder why I get along with you so good.
That's right. She goes,
Oh.
I mean, she goes, you'd come to parties, and it was funny. You'd bring two bags with you, one bag full of booze and another bag full of food, of stuff we never ate, but it was a disguise. So no one knew you were carrying just, a whole bag full of booze in. And,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was like my disguise. Like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And she goes, do you remember the time you came to my boat? And I was on her boat with their boat. And I come down to visit them, and I brought pumpkin parfait. She goes, who was ever going to eat pumpkin parfait? I remember, shopping, going, all right, I've got 2 handles of vodka here, and I can't just walk in with those. I got to go get some other stuff. And all of a sudden I'm walking around buying stuff. We probably ate it 17 or 18 hours later. We were coming down for some sort of sugar drop, but you know, you couldn't just walk in with 2 handles. You had to have all the other stuff to make it look like you were a normal human being.
Oh my
You know?
God, that's too funny.
She goes, you were the Pied Piper of badness. I'm like, all right, that's all right, good. Now today, how do we live the other way, where we start to find some ways of lighting people's candle, right? Not putting them out. How do we light the world with, bringing love and joy? And I think, the more people we surround ourselves with, that feels pretty good.
It does, and I can't thank you enough too for giving me this opportunity. I know you've got a growing and huge following here, and this is I
Yeah.
don't take this lightly. I know when you invited me for the first episode, I'm like, well, why? This is technology driven. Why would you want me? Some snot nosed kid from West Marin, barely had a pot to piss in growing up, be on your show, who's been in recovery, and you're like, you know what, dude, just do it. So you, my friend, gave me the courage to actually step out, because it was one of the first 2 or 3 podcasts I did. And, it just, this is how we do it. Now I got that song stuck in my head.
This is how we do it. All right,
Oh,
folks. If Shawn, let's do all the work stuff. All right, people. Number one, I'll put all Shawn's books down below. It's a great library of books that are worth reading. Audience, come on. When I tell you to read a good book, I've read them. They're great books to read, and they're worth
thank you.
the time invested in them. They're not hard to read, and they're great practical things to bring into your life every single day. In fact, I continue to read them. It's be bold. Go do that now. Buy those books today. It'd be great in your library. Shawn, if people want to get a hold of you, have you come speak for them or coach for them, what's the best way to do that?
Go to my website. It's ShawnLangwell, ShawnLangwell.com. And I'm responsive on email. If you want to shoot me a personal email and tell me what's going on, whether it's executive coaching, personal coaching, or you just want to walk through some things, I'm happy to have a quick conversation and see what that looks like. That email is Shawn Langwell Writer, ShawnLangwellWriter at gmail.com. And those are the 2 simplest ways. And I'm on social media and LinkedIn, and you can find me. If you search my name, there's some fun stuff that comes up, including episodes I've done with Anthony and a couple other podcasts. So there's just a lot of good stuff. And I'm happy to help wherever you are and wherever you think you might need help. I'm happy to help.
Guys, it's one of the best watched podcasts, the number one highest ranking podcast we have at the podcast. Shawn is just great at it. Please go back if you haven't seen the other podcasts. Jump in and watch those. Shawn brings with him just a great knowledge. Shawn, I'm so grateful for you jumping on. Thanks for being spontaneous and jumping on it. Appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, and thanks for this opportunity. And I'll email you and we'll get you on my show so you can tell a little bit more about your story and inspire some folks because you've helped a lot of people and I want to talk about that.
Awesome. I'm grateful for that. Audience members, as always, please take a second and like. Last week we had 35,000 subscribers on YouTube. The numbers were nuts. I mean, nuts. 35,000 subscribers. I'm so grateful for that. I mean, look, praise. I mean, it's amazing. I first of all, I'm humbled. I'm not sure how that happens, but I'm grateful for that. If audience, if you guys could, some of you guys, I noticed it made it all the way to the podcast and weren't subscribers. If you could take a second and do that now, it makes the world of difference to Alyssa and Joe and all the people in the background that put this podcast together. They work tirelessly day and night on it. And also put some questions, put some down there. I like the show. I didn't like Anthony's hair. I don't know. Shawn, tell me how you do it. Give me some questions or something that, we know you're out there. I love the questions and the interaction with all of you. So if you could take a second and do that now. And Shawn, brother, I'm grateful for the show and thanks for everything.